Welcome. This is James Corbett of The Corbett Report with your EyeOpener report for BoilingFrogsPost.com. Turkish claims earlier this year that 3 Chechen militants who were gunned down in Istanbul were in fact killed by Russian agents hardly made a ripple in mainstream Western media. Seen as a minor footnote to the ongoing Russian edition of the so-called global war on terrorism, it seemed like an interesting but isolated incident. Far from being unusual, however, what this incident points to is only the latest data point on a graph that demonstrates protection of Chechen terrorists from the capital of Turkey right into the heart of Europe.
11 people arrested in Europe on charges of terrorism are reported to have links to Chechen militants. Investigators in Belgium say they're part of an international terror network that was preparing a bloody Christmas campaign in Europe. They're also said to be hiring people and seeking funds to finance terrorists in Russia's Republic of Chechnya.
Many Chechens have been assassinated, have been taken out here in Turkey, but also most recently in Austria. Do Chechens train here to go and fight in Caucasus?
Here, the Chechens only think about bread.
Like many other small European towns, New Kirchen in southern Austria seems quiet and peaceful. While never judge a book by its cover. One of its residents is now under arrest, suspected of being the brain behind an Islamic network recruiting extremists and plotting attacks in the heartland of the European Union. An ethnic Chechen, Aslanbek, was detained at the airport in Vienna as he returned from a pilgrimage to Mecca. News about the incident went around the world, although strangely, none of the locals seemed to know much about it.
A leading Chechen separatist wanted in Russia for alleged murder and kidnapping has been arrested in Poland. Ahmed Zakayev, who lives in Britain, was seized as he attended the World Chechen Congress. He faces charges back in Russia of kidnapping and murder during the war in Chechnya in the 1990s. Polish officials are now deciding whether to extradite.
That the public might not have known that an accused Chechen separatist leader had been living openly in Britain for years before his arrest in Poland is hardly surprising. The Zakayev case was given some coverage in the European press at the time, but after having been seized while attending a Chechen rebel congress in Copenhagen, Danish authorities decided against extraditing him because of insufficient evidence that he was involved in murder and kidnapping. He ended up in London, where, again, Britain refused to extradite him to Russia. What this case, and the many other instances of Chechen militants living openly in the heart of Europe, points to is the fundamental hypocrisy underlying the US-led, NATO-enforced, Western-backed, war on terror paradigm. Just as the selfsame Afghan mujahedeen could be called freedom fighters by one American president and evildoers by another, so too authorities can use the freedom fighter excuse to justify looking the other way when Islamic extremists from the Northern Caucasus set up base in Europe. Upon closer examination, however, the West has not been involved in merely tacit support of the terrorists in the Caucasus, but in active funding, training, and protection of these terrorists. The charge has been made openly by the Chechen president for years now.
Chechnya's President Ramzan Kadyrov is blaming the West for supporting rebels in order to destabilize the Caucasus and Russia. During an interview, Kadyrov says that he's convinced the rebels are backed by Western money and weapons. Chechnya has seen a surge in rebel activities in the past few months, and he says that Russia needs a military strategy to resist the Western influences that are sparking disorder in the Northern Caucasus.
But now the Chechen leader says, quote, "We're fighting in the mountains with the American and English intelligence agencies. They are fighting not against Kadyrov, not against traditional Islam, they are fighting against the sovereign Russian state. There was a terrorist, Chitagov, he worked for the CIA. He had U.S. citizenship. When we killed him, I was in charge of the operation, and we found a U.S. driving license, and all the other documents were also American."
Indeed, as revealed by FBI whistleblower Sibel Edmonds in a landmark interview with the Corbett Report last week, the information in the public record only reaffirms what she discovered while translating intercepts and communications for the FBI. That the West has been actively and openly supporting, funding, and financing terrorists in the Caucasus region for years, and is continuing to do so.
Fethullah Gulen, he was a Turkish imam in Turkey. Okay, since 80s, he was preaching, advocating for Islamic government for Turkey, and not the secular government that Turkey has had. The things had changed since Ataturk's time. And because of the secular stand of Turkish government, by mid-1990s, he ended up in Turkish government's wanted list. And he was about to go to jail because he wanted to overthrow the military regime, the military government in Turkey, and replace it with the Islamic one. Now, during the same time period, this Susurluk incident took place. And as I said, the cover was exposed for the United States, NATO, and these commandos. And the United States, they said, okay, we're going to go to plan B, and that is via religion. And we have picked our person. It's going to be this guy, Fethullah Gulen. So the guy who was indicted was going to jail, mysteriously ended up in NATO-owned plane, private plane, and in 1997 came to the United States, landed here in Washington, D.C., and started working with the State Department, the CIA, and Pentagon in taking over where they stopped the plans with the Gladio arm, the Turkish commandos there who were the ultranationalist Turks. So what happened was Fethullah Gulen, within 3 years after he came to the United States, opened more than 300 mosques in Kyrgyzstan, in Azerbaijan. You just name all the stands that Pepe Escobar refers to as the stands. And they also, this is Fethullah Gulen as the leader of this religious, is actually considered a cult, the Islamic religious cult, madrasas, these school systems in all over Central Asia and Caucasus that they said, well, we're going to teach them, science. This is a moderate Islam. We are not teaching them anything about fanaticism. So, in fact, we have science classes and we have even English classes. Well, what he did, Fethullah Gulen, was provided these cover jobs for all these CIA operatives to go to those regions. They all went there as volunteer English teachers because Fethullah Gulen's madrasas also taught English. And so you had hundreds of. A lot of these people were given Turkish passports. I mean, these were not forged. These were Turkish passports given to them. And once they got their Turkish passports from Turkey, NATO planes were taking these people during the wars in the Balkan area, with Kosovo, to Eastern Europe, and they were actually there in the Balkans. Then they would go back. I mean, we as the United States and also NATO has been working with, or had been working with, bin Laden and at least 6-7 other groups, including the Chechens in that region all the way until 2001, 9/11. And again, I have said this during several interviews by hinting, by actually saying it, and nobody seems to really pick up on the importance of this. When I say first-hand information that we had, I got to see, I got to read, I got to listen to. 1996 to 2001, every single terror operation that was carried out by Chechens in Russia and elsewhere in that region were financed, sponsored, trained, supported, protected by us, not indirectly, directly. And now we are seeing that Russia says, well, enough is enough. We are going to do what we're going to do. And in fact, they have been using the same justification as the United States. But you know what? You're fighting terror. We are fighting our own terror. These are our terrorists. This is our kind of 9/11 Al-Qaeda. We're going to get them, whether they are in Turkey or whether they are in Dubai. And it's very interesting. If you look at these leadership for the Chechen terrorists, or even some of the other Islamic groups there that we have been working with, the number one country is Turkey. Number two country is Germany. Okay, you have the two top NATO allies. Then you have Dubai, and you have Qatar. For some reasons, these people, these so-called terrorists, these Islamist terrorists, they don't end up in Iran or Syria. They never went to Libya or even Afghanistan. They are in Turkey, Germany, and Qatar and Dubai.
In 2008, Russia's Channel 1 television station aired a documentary alleging that the financing for the Chechen militants was coming from a Turkish construction company, Enka. The documentary, entitled The Caucasus Plan, alleged intimate Western involvement in support of the Chechen separatists, that Germany printed the country's new currency, that France produced new passports, and that the entire operation was being coordinated by the US. Particular objects of suspicion in the documentary were Turkish companies like Enka, Alarka, and Gamma, which are accused of financing the Chechen rebels. The documentary was immediately denounced by anonymous Turkish officials and prompted an official denial from Enka. As Sibel Edmonds noted in our interview, this is in fact a favored avenue of investment for the CIA and the US State Department's black operations. To substantially overpay legitimate companies for no-bid contract work for the US government on the understanding that a percentage of those funds will be diverted to US operations in the area. According to Edmonds, this is exactly what happened in the case of Enka.
So this came out in 2004, 2005 on my case. And the Russian documentary and investigation exposed one of the, and this is one of the many, financial operations to back these terrorists. And as I said, Chechens are only one. There are others. There are other Islamic groups there that we have been supporting, was through this gigantic Turkish company called Enka, and their construction company. And well, if you look at Enka, Enka is the top tier player and has been with the American Turkish Council here in the United States. And Enka, this Turkish construction company, of course, has presence all over Central Asia and Caucasus. And it's a very easy way for Enka to get the money to these various fractions, again, whether it's Chechens or other groups. So if you go to Enka's website and look at the projects they have been working, you see that they build most of the, many of the, and renovate American consulates and embassies all over the world, in Africa, in Europe. Say, that's interesting. The United States is using this Turkish construction company, not a US construction company, or not several. It's just they're using mainly this company to do all sorts of renovation projects all over the world, like in Congo, in Africa. Why would be the case? Again, it is not difficult to realize what is happening here. And I got to see several cases like Enka's, and Enka was included in my the investigations that I was working with the FBI agents. What they do is, and this is United States, they have the bidding process. They make it a no-bid process in terms of being closed bid, not open. And they have Enka to come and bid, let's say, for a project that would cost $1 million. They would bid $10 million, okay? And the deal is there. Enka, many other Turkish companies like Enka's, they pocket their share, and the rest, the US says, you're going to give this Chechen group this.
The notion that the US is interested in the Caucasus region in general, or would be interested specifically in helping to wrest control of the area from Kremlin-friendly groups, is neither new nor controversial.
At the end of the Soviet Union, another player entered the region, and that was the United States. The United States established a very strong relationship with Azerbaijan initially. More recently, that relationship has really been made with Georgia. The point is that there's a lot of players operating currently in this very small piece of real estate. Also, there are two games going on at the same time. At a higher level, there is a grand geopolitical game that involves the United States, Russia, Turkey, and Iran.
Perhaps the only puzzling factor in the whole situation is the relative silence from the Kremlin about these accusations. Given Moscow's evident conviction that the Chechen terror organizations are being protected and supported by the West, why have they maintained such relative silence? Are they afraid of starting a broader confrontation with NATO, one that could conceivably lead to the next World War? Are they waiting for the rock-solid documentation of the intervention that they could use in the court of public opinion? Or are they merely consolidating their own power waiting for a strategic moment to act against those countries they suspect of attempting to destabilize and circumvent their regional dominance. From the outside, it is impossible to tell, but until the reality behind the terror in the Caucasus is addressed more openly in Western political discourse, we will never be able to even broach the question. This video is brought to you by the subscribers of BoilingFrogsPost.com. For more information on this and other topics, please go to BoilingFrogsPost.com. For more information and commentary from James Corbett, please go to CorbettReport.com.